All right, so let's refresh where we've been. Last week, we left John. He was in the earthly wilderness. He had seen the judgment of the great prostitute. He has seen now Satan, the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet, all in the lake of fire. So all opposition to God is now gone. But the story is incomplete, right? There's what comes next, because just knowing that all this is gone, I was like, well, what? So what is it supposed to be if once all this is gone? What replaces it? And so tonight is about what comes next. And we're going to start at the tail end of Vision 3 with John in the wilderness. And there he's going to be briefly introduced to what's next. And then it gets good. Then we're going to go to Vision 4. And John is going to go from being in the wilderness to being right outside the New Jerusalem, to being inside the New Jerusalem. So right now, as we start chapter 21 in verse 1, what is the first thing that John sees, and why is that important? Yeah, new heaven and new earth. And why does there need to be a new heaven and new earth? Yeah, the old one is gone, right? The first heaven and first earth, the one that was characterized by sin and opposition to God, it's gone. And God had promised a new heaven and a new earth where only righteousness would dwell. 2 Peter 3 talks about this. Peter says that the heavens and the earth that now exist are stored up for fire, being kept until the day of judgment and the destruction of the ungodly. And then he says, but according to this promise, we are now waiting for a new heavens and new earth in which righteousness dwells. Now, so John sees this new heaven and new earth, but what doesn't he see in this new earth? The sea. And why is that important? Yeah, the sea is represented with all this evil stuff. You notice it says the sea is no more. Remember when the great prostitute was judged and the angel picks up the millstone and throws it down, and then he starts saying, this will be no more. This other thing will be no more. Everything associated with Babylon was no more, and now the sea is no more. Because the sea has been figuratively associated with lots of evil stuff. Who came out of the sea? The beast came out of the sea. Remember all the merchants of Babylon? They were making all their money from all the wares of Babylon, including all the slaves, and all that was being transported and carried on the sea. And then last week, when we had the judgment of the dead were all being given up by the sea as well. That's one of the places that's holding people waiting for judgment. So the sea is not a good place. Tomorrow, Eddie and I are going to the shore, and the sea will be a wonderful place. But it's where I like to spend my anniversary, on the sea. But remember, to these people, the sea in John's time is a scary place. If you go out in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, and it's dark out, and there's no lights, and it's just you and water everywhere you can see, and when the water gets rough, there's no way to save yourself. And so the sea was associated with bad things. So the sea is no more. Anything we associate with bad is gone from the new earth. So John is looking at this, and now he sees something else. What else does he see next? Yeah, the holy city, the New Jerusalem. And it's coming down out of heaven. And what else do we learn about it? Yeah, it's like a bride. It is prepared as a bride for her husband. Both Old and New Testaments speak of the relationship of God and his people in terms of marriage. And so that's our hint. This New Jerusalem that's coming down is not just a collection of buildings. It is a city of people, the people of God. So all the while in here, when you're reading in chapter 21 about the New Jerusalem or the city, you can just go, oh, that's the saints. So when we read this, we go, he saw the New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven from God. We can immediately go, oh, that's the saints coming down from heaven. prepared as a bride for her husband. Now, how is this bride prepared? I think we had this before. What was the bride wearing? White. And what does that white symbolize? Purity. And how did she come to be wearing white? Was that? It was granted to her by the blood of Christ. So it's a two-stage thing. First, there's the blood of Christ. So she's washed her garments in the blood and become pure. You don't think of washing in blood making white, but this is the sacrificial blood taking away her sins in Christ, through Christ's death, and then she's left white as a result of that. So that's part number one. Jesus' death on the cross enables her to wear white. And then as Barb was saying, then it was granted to her to clothe herself in fine linen, which is her righteous deeds, which is Revelation 19:8. If you saw the comments in the app about what's with Revelation 19:18, it was Revelation 19:8 where it's granted to her to wear white, which is the righteous deeds of the saints. So she's prepared in two ways. Part of it is she's prepared by Christ, and then it's granted to her to do righteous deeds, and then she has to step into what Jesus has granted to her and do the righteous deeds, right? How else do we see this husband-wife kind of motif reflected here at the beginning of chapter 21 between God and his people? Yeah, they're going to dwell together. God announces that the dwelling place of God is with man, and he will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and he will be their God. They are going to live together. I was going to say, he talks about, I'm going to be their God, they're going to be my people, and I'm going to be their God. They're living together in an appropriate relationship. This is the God-people relationship is the way it's supposed to be. Now, if they said, God, you can live with me, but you're not my God, that would be not appropriate. But here he's saying, I will be their God. They will take me as their God. I will take them as my people. So it is a appropriate, faithful, intimate relationship that they're going to be having now. And actually, that's the way God always wanted it, right? When God created man and woman in the garden, they were living there in God's presence until they sinned, right? Remember, that's when God came and they're hiding themselves from God, and that relationship was now broken. And the short version is they got sent out of the garden. But throughout the storyline of the Bible, we continue to see God expressing his desire to once again live an intimate covenant relationship with his people. So finally here in Revelation 21, this desire God has had, starting in Genesis, is now in Revelation become a reality. Now in verse 4, it says God will wipe away their tears and there will be no more death. And why does he tell us that is? Yeah, there's man's sin, and that's why there's death. And why is there no more of this tears and death and everything else? It's passed away, right? It says the former things have passed away. These are all former things. I started thinking about this and how many times during my day I am bumping into former things. In the last 24 hours. Physical pain from illness or injury. Anytime that happens. Stub your toe on the door frame, former things. Emotional pain from dealing with imperfect people or my wrong perception of myself, former things. Mourning over loss or over death, former things. Here's one, frustration at our sin, shame over our sin, all those former things. And as I was going around interacting with various people the last couple of days, I've been going like, former thing, there's another one of those former things that, and so I found it kind of interesting to see how prevalent all these things are that are classified as the former things that are still current for me, but by the time we get to Revelation 21, they all pass away. And In verse 5, the one on the throne now assures John that he's not just making some things new, he's making all things new. Like, there won't be fewer tears, there will be none. There won't just be less pain, there will be none. There won't be fewer difficult relationships, there will be none. And we could go on and on. It's amazing the more I think about it. And then in verse 6, God says, "It is done." Now, where have we seen "it is done" before? In Revelation. Yes, yes, Revelation 16. We get done with all the judgments. It's 16:15. The angel pours out the seventh bowl judgment. And at the end of that, a voice from the throne proclaims, "It is done." In other words, all the sin is done. The judgment is complete. Sin is gone. And now in 21:6, we hear that exact same phrase, but it is like the flip side. Not only is sin gone, but now all has been made new. God has judged the old creation, and he has now brought in the new creation. So judgment and renewal are two sides of the same coin, right? And that's why last week I was saying, why do we have judgment in here? Like, is it just judgment for judgment's sake? And it's not. Chapter 21 shows us there was judgment that had to be done so that that new creation could be done. Because I don't like the idea of judgment. I just don't, right? And half of it is because I'm an imperfect person. But if I know that there's a reason for the judgment, there's a good reason, because God's doing something amazing, then it's not so bad. Then I can see that God is not just being vindictive. No, God has a desire to dwell with us and to have us to experience life as he meant it to be. And that's part of why there has to be judgment. So it's like God can't make new without dealing with sin. And our sin, if you have trusted Christ for your salvation, your sin has been dealt with on the cross from a judicial perspective. In other words, you're declared not guilty, but God is still dealing with the sin that we're committing every day, right? And from the time that we trust him for our salvation until the time we're in heaven, he is transforming us every day. He's changing us. He's pointing out sins. He's enabling us to overcome sins. He's removing all those because we can't be made new unless he deals with sin. So that's part of what he does in our life, right, is he deals with sin. And when we finally get to the Revelation 21 of our lives, or when we die and leave this earth and go to heaven, then we will be fully, completely transformed and fully sinless. Verse 6, he also reminds us that he is the Alpha and the Omega. How would you explain Alpha and Omega? Like, why is he telling us this here? He says, I'm the beginning and the end. Why does that fit here? He's the first and the last. Yeah, he's sovereign over everything. And God began way back in Genesis, he created. And in Genesis after the fall, he put in promises that one day this was going to be made right. And finally now in Revelation 21, he has brought his promises to completion. And let's see. He goes, I'm the Alpha and the Omega. And then he talks about to the thirsty, I will give from the spring of the water of life without payment. Now, so the thirsty get to drink from the water of life. Now, what does being thirsty mean? Let me take a sip of my coffee right now. How are these people thirsty? Yeah, they're thirsty for God. The Bible a lot of times uses that phrase of thirst to depict a person's desire for God. Psalm 63:1 is just one example. It says, "O God, you are my God. Earnestly I seek for you. My soul thirsts for you." But then the Bible also refers to, you have the person who's thirsting, and it depicts God then as a spring of living water that satisfies that thirst. not just for God, but for the true life that is found with God. In Isaiah 55, starting at verse 1, God says, "Come to me, everyone who thirsts. Come to the waters." And then when we say, so what's the water? Isaiah 12, he goes, "With joy you will draw water from the wells of salvation." So in other words, you come to God for this water, but the water is this salvation that we have. And so often in life we thirst for something more, and a lot of times we don't know what it is. We just know that something's missing, right? And the Bible teaches that God is the only one that satisfies that thirst, whatever that thirst is. And different people's thirst may look different, right? It may be a thirst for acceptance. It may be a thirst for, you name it. And yet, God is the one that ultimately satisfies that thirst, whatever it is. And even so, as Christians today, right, we thirst for God, but it is only once we get to heaven that thirst is truly and completely satisfied. Now, in verse 7, he starts talking about who it is that this heritage belongs to. He talks about this wonderful heritage, right? Drinking from the springs of life. You're with God. I will be his God. He will be my son. But who's the one that has this heritage, he calls it? Who gets all this stuff, this relationship? One who conquers. And I kind of don't like the phrase conquer, because that implies it's tough, right? It implies there's a battle. It's not easy. I kind of like to think that the Christian life is easy, right? You become a Christian and everything is great. And right away we're being told, no, you have to conquer. This is going to be a tough slog. We learned in Revelation 3 that the conquerors only conquer because Christ enables them to. Remember, we saw the church at Laodicea that was saying, like, I have everything I need. I don't need anything. And Jesus was saying, like, you have no idea. Like, they were off on their own telling Jesus, like, we don't need you. We'll let you know when we need something. Meanwhile, we think we've got it under control. And Jesus was saying, no, you have to get everything you need from me, right? And you'll find out what you really need, and I'm the only one who can provide it. And so then he said, I'm the one, I'm knocking to be let in, open up the door, and come in, and we'll eat together. We need to have this intimate relationship where you depend on me for everything. And that's how we conquer. Now, I was looking, I really wanted to skip over verse 8, where we talk about the cowardly, faithless, detestable, murderers, sexually immoral, sorcerers, and all those guys. And I didn't want to talk about them because they're the opposite of conquerors. But then I thought, if you want to know what it's like to conquer, it's easier to look at people who aren't conquerors. Because then you just flip it and you know, well, if they're not doing it, then I'll just do the opposite, right? And so I looked at, so the people who don't conquer are cowards, which I don't like being called a coward, but let's look at what was going on. Remember, this is the churches in the Roman Empire, and they are dealing with persecution, and they don't like it, but they're being told that they need to persevere in persecution. The cowards were the ones who chose personal safety over Christ. Persecution gets difficult, and so they go, okay, I'll cave. And so conquerors are the ones that no matter how tough it gets, they stay faithful to Christ, and they maintain their faithful witness. Then he talked about faithless, people who let go of their faith. In other words, when the going gets tough, they pull away from the Lord. Whereas conquerors, when it gets tough, instead of drifting away from the Lord or letting the tough times drive a wedge between them and the Lord, they pull closer to the Lord. Detestable. I don't even know what that word means, right? Lots of people find different things detestable. But when the Bible uses that word, it's actually very closely related to the word for idolatry. Remember that there were a lot of people at this time. Emperor worship was a big thing. You had to worship lots of idols, and you had to worship the emperor. And if you don't worship the emperor, well, you would be in big trouble. You could even be potentially killed. And so the conquerors are the ones that say, not going to do it. I refuse to let anybody or anything take the place of God in my life. I will not worship the emperor. I will not worship wealth. I won't worship the government. I won't let my family take the place of God. They conquer by saying, I worship only the Lord, and that's it. You see this mindset that the conquerors have, right, of I am sticking faithful and I'm sticking tight with the Lord no matter what, and I'm not letting anybody get between me and the Lord. And if the Lord asks me to witness for him, as we're told in Revelation, that is the role of the church, then that's what I'm doing. I don't care if it's popular or not, because I'm hanging on to the Lord. I'm going to conquer. I like this next one. So sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, that's all associated with idolatry, the same stuff. But I like this next one, liars. These are people who claim to be Christians, but then when you see what they say and how they act, it doesn't match up with their profession of faith. And so the conquerors are showing by their words and their deeds that they really believe what they say they believe. So to conquer is to stand firm to the end, even to the point of death, and showing through our words and actions that we truly believe that only Christ is Lord over all, and we trust him completely with our lives, no matter what that ends up looking like. And those are the people that have this heritage of this life with God in the new heaven. And so that brings us to the end of Vision 3. John has seen this. He's in the wilderness. He's just seen all the judgment. And now he's seen this contrasting, wonderful future that is coming, the New Jerusalem, God dwelling with man. And so now we go to Vision 4. And in Vision 4, one of the angels basically says, come on, John, let's leave the wilderness. Let's go over to this high mountain and get a closer look at Jerusalem. They're going to go see it up close and personal. And he actually calls him to see the bride, the wife of the Lamb. So again, we get this reminder. He's being asked to see a city, but it is a city of people. It's this collective bride. And did you notice what else he calls her? It's no longer a bride, the wife. So this is we're no longer in the engagement period. We are now officially, the relationship is now official, right? The people are now enjoying life with the Lamb who gave his life for her. And what does John notice, first off, before he gets into any details about the city? What is his first impression on this? The radiance of God. It says it is, the glory of God is radiance like a most rare jewel, like a jasper, clear as crystal. In other words, and if Beth Berlinski was here tonight, she would tell us that jasper is not clear. It's not. It's opaque. But this is like, so if you have a jasper that is clear, oh, that's rare, right? And so this city is just like, it's got the glory of God. It is clear, this clear jasper. It is glistening like a diamond because of God's glory. And normally when I talk about God's glory, I talk about God's powerful presence. And that's true. But here, it is, what is the one with the glory here? Is it God? The city is coming down. The city is the one that has a radiance like the rare jewel. Notice that? It's God's glory, but the city itself is displaying that glory. In other words, the city is now perfectly righteous, and so they are reflecting God's glory to the world. And it's one of those things when you see, if you were to look at all of us in heaven, if somebody looked at us from a distance, they wouldn't see us like we are now. We've all been through 90-degree weather today. We've worked. Some of us need coffee to keep going. But if we were right here in Revelation 21, people would look at us and they would go like, they are glowing. It's amazing, right? They wouldn't see all this other stuff. They would be like, look at all the righteousness. They are just phenomenal. So, and now we get into the city. John is getting closer. He's about to enter the city, and he starts talking about the city wall. And now we have to start figuring out, as we talk, we'll start figuring out, is this city wall literal or figurative? What does John notice about the city wall? And we're going to look from like verses 12 to 25, just wherever you see anything about the city wall. It's high. It's a great high wall. It has 12 gates that never shut. I want to back up for a second to the hold the 12 gates on the city wall. It's a high wall. What was the function of a city wall at that time? Protection, yeah. This was the normal thing. And so say you have this great high wall, it's this image of protection. The protection of the city, of the people in the city. Now, we get to Pam, you had the 12 gates, right? And so what else do we know about the gates? There's 12 gates. They have 12 angels. They have the names of the angels on the gates. There's 3 on each side, and they're all open. So now we have to say, well, if the wall was for protection, but all the gates are open, then the protection is not from the gates, right? Actually, this was interesting. Roman cities would normally have an entrance on only one side of the city, because you can't protect all around. And so everybody had to come in this one spot, and they could protect the one spot. But this city has gates on all 4 sides, all around, and they're all wide open. So the safety and security actually doesn't come from having a closed-off wall. What brings the safety and security? God who's dwelling in the city. And then somebody said the gates, we have the names on the gates. The 12 tribes of Israel. And then we have 12 other names we start learning about. Yeah, the names of the apostles. So the wall has 12 gates with the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. And then it has 12 foundations under the wall. And those foundations have the name of the 12 apostles, again, of the Lamb. So we keep being reminded every time we hear Lamb that Jesus has given his life for his bride in this city. Yeah. So the question at the table is, are the 12 apostles the original 12 apostles, or did Judas get booted and replaced? I have tried for the longest time to figure out exactly who the 12 apostles are, because Paul is an apostle too. So Judas was replaced by Matthias, I think, and then Paul is an apostle, but Paul will tell you he's like the least of them. And I've even looked this up, and I've been unable to figure out now who are the 12 apostles. So honestly, I think it's figurative. It's all the apostles. And there are actually in the New Testament, there's more than 12 apostles, because just like Jesus had he had the 12 disciples, he had the 3 inner circle disciples, and then he has a bigger group of disciples, the 70, and then there's like all y'all disciples. And so, but the 12 disciples represent everybody, and the 12 apostles, I think, just represent everybody who's sent. But starting with those original 12. Yeah, and the Gentiles, yeah. No, the name from the apostles come from the apostles. Oh, I don't think the 12 apostles were each from a different tribe of Israel. So, anyway, so we have the gates with the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. We have the foundations with the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. And isn't that weird? Who would you have expected to be the foundation? The 12 tribes or the apostles? The tribes. I would have thought that. They came first, right? Why might, yes, exactly. Jesus had said the church would be built on them. I'm looking for my verse here that I can't find. But we're told, Paul tells us in one of his letters that the church is built on the foundation of the apostles, Christ being the cornerstone. So in other words, the whole reason that the apostles and the Lamb are the foundation is because everything rests on them, right? All our salvation rests not on the 12 tribes. It actually rests on what Jesus did, the gospel of Jesus Christ, and the apostles who are now spreading it out everywhere. And so that's why the 12 tribes get kind of relegated. They get put in the position of the gates. The 12 tribes like, y'all come, that's great. But the reason you can come is because of the foundational act of what Jesus did. So the city wall we have is referring to the safety of the city, of God's people. And then its foundation of that city wall points to our safety that is found in the Lamb having died for us. And then the 12 apostles who spread that. And then the 12 gates refers to the people from all over being welcomed in. From every direction, everybody is welcome. They have complete access to God who dwells in the city. So that's the wall. Ready to move on? Okay. 18 through 21, verses 18 through 21, we start getting a view from inside the city walls of the glory of the city. And remember, we said that the city wall was transparent jasper. And now we see that the city itself is what? Pure gold, like clear glass. And so, I don't know, were the structures gold? Maybe. But it's a city of people of God that is, you could say, is figuratively clear gold. Now, I've never seen clear gold. Has anybody here seen clear gold? No. Interestingly, it is gold like pure glass, like transparent glass. If you were to ask the people of this time if you've seen transparent glass, people would go like, not really. Because glass was by and large really cloudy and hazy. It had so many impurities in it. And so clear glass was extremely rare. So it's a statement of, if clear glass is only clear because it is pure, it's missing the impurities. So this clear gold, same thing, right? It is missing the impurities. And so again, we say, well, it's a city of clear gold. It's a city of people, a people who are pure. They have no more impurities left in them. So they're just like that city wall, right? If the city wall is God's protection, the protection of God, of a holy God, now the people of the city are also holy in there. And I was thinking, and it gets dangerous when I think, but as a result of being pure, that we are like this transparent glass. You ever hear this thing about living in a glass house? But it got me thinking about being transparent in life. And that got me thinking of Adam and Eve. Because when they sinned, they used to live in the garden with God, and that was great. And they're naked. Great, nobody cared. But when they sin, God shows up, and immediately they hide themselves. They're no longer being transparent, right? And so they are covering up. And I was thinking, how are we like that today, right? We are not transparent yet. We are unable to be transparent. We live with shame over our sin. We cover up all sorts of stuff, right? If we could ask anybody here, is there something that you've never told us in this room? And everybody here would say, there's something I would never tell you. And I'm right there with you. And yet in heaven, we're going to be like transparent. I'm everything. You're happy to see all I am because I have only good things. I'm totally pure. Isn't that an amazing thought? We go back to the way it was in the garden where we can go back to being naked and that's fine. And we're just like, not even worried. Not saying we'll be naked. I'm having a hard time getting there. But this idea that we can be totally transparent and it will be fine. We have nothing to hide. Paula will look at me and she'll go like, I only see pure, clear glass. And I'll say the same of her. Isn't that great? So that's the inside of the city, the people, the purity of the people. And now we start in verse 15 to 17, we start talking about measurements. What did you learn about the measurements of this city? It's a perfect cube. Its length, width, and its height are all equal. It's a just gigantic cube. And each side is 12,000 stadia. Now, set the stadia aside for a second. Anybody pick up on 12,000? 12,000? So we're getting this pointer, right? 12 usually points to the people of God. 1,000, remember, signifies a really big number. So we have the complete number of God's people, and it's a huge number. And then if we were to start calculating out exactly how big this city is, a stadia is 1/8 of a mile. So if you're like me and you immediately bring out the calculator, here's what you find. The city is a cube of 1,500 miles. That's the distance from here to Denver. It's that big. And if you think about 1,500 miles up there, the Earth's atmosphere goes 62 miles. This goes 1,500 miles. It's massive. And so when we said it's the complete number of God's people, it's a huge number. Now they're giving us numbers to say just gargantuan. And the walls are 144 cubits. I don't know if this is height or width, but again, 144, 12 times 12. Again, we're seeing this. He keeps hammering this issue of the complete number of God's people in here. And by the way, 144 cubits is 215 feet, so they're either real tall walls or real wide, I don't know. But let's talk for a second about the significance of this city being a cube, because that's just flat out weird for us, right? What else in the Bible, did you guys figure out what else in the Bible was a cube? The Holy of Holies, yes. Commentators say, and I can't quite get there, but commentators say that the tabernacle in the wilderness, that the Holy of Holies there was a cube of 10 cubits or 15 feet. Maybe. I can't get the math. I don't know. I've tried. Maybe. People who have more degrees than I do assure me that. And I'm okay. But the Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple, we're told explicitly, was a cube. It was 20 cubits by 20 cubits, which is 30 feet by 30 feet. You can read about that in 1 Kings 6. And it's overlaid in pure gold. Like the city is gold. So this cube shape it's 3 dimensions, the exact same thing, and 3 dimensions all the same. 3 symbolizes completeness, right? The Holy of Holies in the temple, what is the Holy of Holies about? What is it? Yeah, it's where God dwelled in the tabernacles or in the temple. So if the 3 sides are all the same, that's completeness. It is God's complete presence among his people. So the weird thing is that the shape of this new city is the same shape of the Holy of Holies. In other words, God is dwelling in all his fullness in this city amongst his people. Is that not weird? To think that you would one day be living in the equivalent of the Holy of Holies in the temple, where nobody could go except the high priest once a year, and you get to live there in the Holy of Holies. But this cube, it's not a 15-foot cube like in the tabernacle, and it's not a 30-foot cube like in the temple. Again, calculator. Each side of the cube is 264,000 times longer than the length of the Holy of Holies in the temple. It's like if you had 1 ounce of liquid, you started with that, and that's your Holy of Holies in the temple. And then you go to something from 1 ounce to the size of Lake Ontario. That is the difference in size. It is this massive explosion in size. So the size of the city now, the Holy of Holies, is figuratively describing this sheer number of God's people. And the shape is pointing to the closeness of God and his people dwelling together. They can't get any closer. We're like right in there, directly in God's presence. They're all living there together. And now John points out in verse 22, there's something missing in this city. What's missing? The temple. And why is the temple missing? Yeah, because the temple is the Lord. It's like we're dwelling with the Lord. It's like we don't even need a temple. We're like right here in the Holy of Holies. Interestingly, if you By this time, the Jerusalem temple has been destroyed for 20 years, but John knew the Jerusalem temple well, and people he's writing to would know it. And if you went to the temple, well, first of all, there was a Holy of Holies, right? But then there's this big building all around it because to stop anybody from going near the Holy of Holies. Unholy people could not go near holy God. And then outside of the temple, there were all these courts, right? There was the court of the priests. They could get closest to God. There was the court of the Israelite men. There was the court of the women. There was the court of the Gentiles. All these different peoples were all separated from each other, and they were all separated from God. But here, there's none of that. There's no separation whatsoever. We're all together in the Holy of Holies. And that's why Paul writes in Ephesians 2:14, he goes, Christ himself is our peace. He has made us all, Jews and Gentiles, one, and has broken down in his flesh the dividing wall of hostility so that he may create himself one person from all of us, no longer men, women, Jews, Gentile. We're all one body. We're the body of Christ. And he goes, so making peace. And do you know what the name Jerusalem means? We'll start out. It's Shalom, city of peace. So talk about peace. I mean, we have to have peace with God if we're going to be like right smack in the Holy of Holies. This whole chapter has just been amazing to me. It's almost like I'm getting little goosebumps right now just thinking about this. And so verses 24 to 27, you see the nations and the kings of the earth are all bringing their glory and honor. Now, the last time we saw the nations referred to, what were the nations doing? They were fighting. They were all fighting against God. Before that, the nations were all trampling the holy city. And yet we're saying, these nations have come to faith, these ones, because, first of all, it says, nothing unclean comes into the city, only those whose names have been written in the book of life. So these are the nations who somehow, through the witness of the saints, they have come to faith in Christ. And they're not just bringing wealth. Notice they're bringing glory and honor and praise to the Lord. And now in chapter 22, we get to like the best part. I think it's spectacular. First, John, from a distance, he saw the new heaven and the earth, and he sees the city, and it's glistening, and that's awesome. And then he comes closer, and he sees the walls and the immense size of the city, and it's just one gigantic Holy of Holies. It's total safety, and is being totally immersed in God's presence. And now they move further into the city. And what does the angel show John? In fact, if you drew it, then what stood out to you? What did you see? The river and the tree. Like, what are we looking at here? What's that? The throne? Okay. I mean, Izzy. It's like a Garden of Eden, except it's not a miniature. This is like Garden of Eden on steroids, right? The Garden of Eden, Genesis 2:6, we just told it's a garden in the east. Man got put there. There was a tree of life in the middle of the garden, and there's a river that flows out of Eden to water the garden. And man is there with God in his presence, but then after the fall, he gets expelled. And after he gets expelled from the garden, he is now blocked from the tree of life and the river of life. But God had said, as we mentioned before, that God was going to bring blessing, and so there was hope. And the prophets later on began talking about this river again that was in the garden. We're going to start seeing this again. Ezekiel 47 talked about seeing a new temple, and he goes, water was issuing out from below the threshold and flowing out of the temple. And he goes, first it's ankle deep, then it's knee deep, then it's waist deep, just water like crazy. And he's saying, everything, wherever the water goes, everything lives. And then remember in Zechariah last fall, Zechariah talked about on that day, at the end, living waters will flow out from Jerusalem all year round. if you're with us in John, you'll remember that later Jesus goes into the temple in the Feast of Tabernacles, and suddenly he stands up and he says, if anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. And he is now declaring, oh, it's not a river. I am the one. I'm the one that brings life. And he says, whoever believes in me, as the scripture has said, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water. So Jesus is the source of the water. The Holy Spirit is the one that actually gives the living water. And actually, you notice when you became a Christian and you were given the Spirit, the Holy Spirit to live inside of you? Paul says it this way in Ephesians 1:13, when you believed in Christ, you were sealed with the promised Holy Spirit, who is the guarantee of our inheritance. In other words, when you get the Spirit, and this, I should have backed up. John 7, Jesus stands up, he says, if anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water. And then John wrote, he was saying this about the Spirit. The Spirit is the one that gives life. And so now in Ephesians, Paul is saying, when you believe, you were sealed with the Spirit, who's the guarantee that you are not, that you have this life. The Spirit gives life, you've got the Spirit in you, and is the guarantee that when you get to heaven, there's this massive river, tons and tons of life. You get just a little bit right now to continually remind you that you've got life now, but oh boy, it's nothing compared to what you're going to experience later. So Revelation 21 isn't just, I should say 22, isn't just about a return to the Garden of Genesis. It is like way better. In Genesis, we're just told there's a river and it watered the tree of life. In Revelation, we're told it's the water of life that flows from the throne of God and the Lamb, and it's flowing down the street, and it's got this monstrous tree. It's either it's on both sides, or there's all over, and we just read in Genesis about it's a tree of life. You can eat from it. This tree, we're told, it's monstrous tree. It has 12 kinds of fruit. It's a different fruit every month. It's complete supply of fruit. Its leaves are for healing the nations. Remember, we were told in Revelation 21 that God would wipe every tear away from our eyes. This is that exact same thing. When you get to heaven, two different ways of saying it. God will wipe away every tear. The leaves from the tree of life will heal you. Because we're all going to need healing when we get there, right? In Genesis, we're told there was a curse for mankind's sin. Here in 22, verse 3, no longer will there be anything accursed. The curse is gone. Instead of a broken relationship with the Lord, we have the throne of God and of the Lamb is right there in the middle, and his servants are right there worshiping him instead of rebelling against him. And it says, and we will see his face. Do you know that ever since man got kicked out of the garden, nobody has ever been able to see God's face and live? Some people saw the face of Jesus, but that's like the veiled face. Nobody's seen God in all his glory because we couldn't stand it. But when we get to heaven, we will be able to see God in all his glory, and it'll be amazing. And it says, we will reign forever and ever. So this is different. We talked before about the 1,000-year reign. This is like the forever. It will be like man was supposed to be having dominion in the garden. And it will be such intimate fellowship with the Lord. You remember Jesus said that when he conquered, he sat down on his Father's throne? Jesus and the Father sitting on the same throne, reigning. And now we get that same thing. We will be reigning in such close fellowship. It's like we're all together doing this. And so this idea of we're all sitting together reigning is like we are not meant to reign independently. In the garden, man wasn't supposed to reign independently. They were supposed to be reigning over creation, but they were reigning as God's representative. So if in the garden an animal could ask Adam one question and he could ask God and he would get the same answer from both of them, right? They're reigning the same. And that's the exact same way we'll be doing. We'll be reigning not independently, but in total dependence, always aligning with the Father's will. It's just like Jesus said in John 5, he said, I do nothing on my own. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just, because I always seek to do the will of the one who sent me. Perfectly, in perfect alignment. So we were talking about this before y'all got here. Some of us were talking about this. What is our reign going to look like? Who are we reigning over? You ever think about it? In the garden, people were not reigning over people because they were all perfect and they were all in alignment with God's will. If Adam and Eve hadn't sinned and they just had started birthing babies, they all would have been perfectly aligned with God's will. So there's no need for them to reign over each other. So what were they reigning over? Animals. This was the debate we had. Are there animals in heaven? I think this is pretty clear. Adam and Eve were reigning over animals, and they were having sovereignty over the plants and everything else. So that's one thing, right? We'll be exercising sovereignty over the creation. I was telling them, I don't know if that means Mabel the Wonder Cat will be there, but cats will probably be there. Probably. That's my thought. We judge the angels. So we are over the angels. Yeah. We also, this was interesting to me. I never thought about this. Commentators are saying, we will have participated in the judgment of unholy people and the angels on the last day. And the fact that that judgment continues forever in their punishment, we in some way have sovereignty over that as well. It's kind of like today, people who have a life sentence in prison, and people are always going like, should we let them out now? And then they decide yes or no. So at some point, we'll be in there saying, should they still stay in there? This is just. They stay in there. So I don't know. But we will, again, have that reign. So all this is really interesting, what this new city is going to be like. But the question is, why do the 7 churches that John wrote to, why do they need to hear this? And why do we? And what does it have to do with conquering? To get our act together? They were losing faith. Yeah, the churches are having a really rough time of it, right? They are being persecuted like crazy. Some of them are being killed for their faith. We read earlier in Revelation that the beast was going to be allowed to conquer some of the saints, that they were going to be killed for their faith. And so they need to know not just that they have been saved from God's wrath. They need to know not what I'm being saved from, what am I being saved to? If I'm going to give my life, why? What is the end result of that? And so all through Revelation, Jesus has been encouraging the churches to endure and to conquer, even as the beast is being allowed, for Jesus' own purposes, to conquer and kill many of them. This last vision is their motivation. It lets them know that no matter what happens on this earth, it's going to be amazing. It whets their appetite for what is coming, and it makes them pull up their sagging britches, hold tight to their faith, and head straight into spiritual battle to tell the world about Christ. Because it is going to be not just all right, it is going to be amazing. And I was thinking of that. Growing up, I had this view of heaven that was a little bit, I kind of thought it was boring. And I got done with this and I thought, may the idea of heaven never be so blah for us that it fails to motivate us. Because this vision is meant to go, holy cow, this is what I want. If this is what a conqueror gets, I want to conquer. May we never think that this life on earth is more exciting than what's to come. May we never think that heaven is just some vague existence where we float around on clouds with harps. It is an amazing, eternal existence, like an earthly existence that we know, right? An existence in the presence of God and having this honored position, not just of being with God, reigning right alongside with him freely walking into his presence and sitting down next to him on his throne. And so may we be so captivated that anything this world offers or any troubles that this world gives us would just pale in comparison, and that we would not just tell others, that we would want to tell others because we want them to experience this amazing future too. So that's vision 4. So I'll send you back to your tables. And this reminder, next time we're going to go through and now put it all together and go back to the bird's eye view of this. So go back to your tables and we'll come back in 2 weeks.